Hey guys, Disler Magic here, and with the pre-release on my mind, because it starts in, I don't know, 6-7 hours from now, at least at the time of this recording, I thought, well, better late than never. I'll make a video telling you some tips. Now, if you want better tips, more generalized and more focused and to the point, just search my channel for the word pre-release and you'll find other pre-release tip videos that are probably better than this one. This one just adds to them because why would I make the same video over and over and over every pre-release? I know some channels do that, but seriously, why? So there's tons of people out there telling you what to do, how to handle your pool and build the deck for pre-release. Some with mixed accuracy, by the way. But they never tell you, like, the exceptions. Like, oh, do this, do this, do this, well, unless this, don't do this. I would say that at a pre-release, making really good, smart decisions compared to making bad mistakes, the mistakes will hurt you more. If you kind of went with a less than ideal color, but it's still pretty good, or you forgot to do this or that, whatever, it's a little slip up. But if you make one of these disastrous mistakes, you are going to lose. So the number one mistake is people look up the pre-release cards and go, I'm going to go green, which actually green looks pretty powerful. So, that's why I use it as an example. Do not have a color picked out. Do not have a mechanic picked out. Don't say I'm going to go all flyers. I'm going to go all death touchers. I'm going to go all small creatures. I'm going to go red, I'm going to go white, I'm going to go 3-color, I'm going to go mono. No, don't determine anything ahead of time. You're going to see it, it's going to be subpar, and then you're going to kind of try to force it to work, which is really not a good idea. What you have to do in all cases is look at your actual pool, and then that is all that matters. I mean, what other cards are in the set, whatever, okay, there's some relevance because you have to be aware that somebody else might have Exert in their, deck, I guess, and use that to build it. But other than that, I mean, just look at your cards and build accordingly, and that's it. It's actually quite simple when you look at it, that way. Now, there are websites out there that will let you do sample pools. I like them, except you'll never know if you're right. Like, it's cool to get, like, the practice and to analyze the cards and to learn the mechanics, but those examples have nothing to do with what your pool is going to look like. I mean, unless you ran like 1,000 pools, but even then, you still don't really know what your pool is going to look like. And if you made the wrong build decision, you'd never know because you don't actually play somebody. So I wouldn't go too hard on that either as far as practicing on there. It helps you in general as far as reading the cards quickly, but you can't even physically move them around and sort them on screen, which that alone makes it almost impossible. I mean, the first thing you should do is make 5 piles for the colors. So just in general, my technique, and I'm not saying everybody does it this way because everybody thinks differently. I make, 5 piles, and then as I'm making the piles, I just kind of think, okay, like, where are the huge bomb cards, like the really good ones? And I think I could have sworn 2 or 3 of them went into this color, so that's the color I'll look at first, but I do look at all 5 colors. That is another mistake. People will look at the first color, they'll look at black. Oh, this looks really good. I mean, it's this amount of creatures, that amount of spells. These spells are really powerful. They got 2 just bomb cards in there, a bunch of flyers. Cool, I'm gonna go with it. And they never look at the other colors. As good as one pool looks, your other ones might be better. There's a chance, so at least look. Plus, I mean, you're gonna have to pick out a second color anyway. It's really hard to run mono. I mean, I wouldn't even recommend it under almost any circumstances. So just quickly breeze through. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make, me included, this is my number one mistake, even in draft. I just look at all these spells and I'm like, oh, that's a really cool removal and a bounce and oh, cool, draw. And then eventually I have not even close to enough creatures to win the game. Because, I mean, as control-y and draw heavy as you want to go, you still have to actually win the game by hitting your opponent, usually. So make sure you put in enough creatures. In fact, I usually just start with, well, when I'm looking through all 5 colors, I'll say, yeah, these are all really powerful, but it's less than half creatures. I can't do that unless I mix it with like green, and green is 90% creatures because overall you're going to need a certain amount of creatures to win. So shorting yourself on creatures and putting in a bunch of manipulative cool spells, it might seem smart, but it's really not. It will not work. It'll backfire. So when I'm looking through a color, I'll while, concentrating on, okay, how powerful are these cards? How good are they? And what's their average mana cost? Because if they're all powerful, but they're all like 4, 5, 6, and there's very little cheap stuff, either mix it with a second color that is cheap stuff, and then skew your mana base a little bit on the lands, or just don't play that color because it's too damn high. But even before that, in priority order, I think, is there enough creatures? And if the answer is no, that's it. I'm not going to play that color. I'm eliminating the whole color right off the bat. So don't try to force a color to work just because it's good cards, or if it has way too high of casting costs. If you're sitting there doing nothing, there's always that one guy who runs a dirt cheap 3-color deck with nothing but 2 cost on down creatures. Every time there's a couple people that try to just blitz you and knock you over on the early turn because you can't get your colors fixed or you just can't get your crap together and get your deck going. I'm sure that 6-cost sorcery looks really good, it's really powerful, but if you lose before you get to 6 mana, you're in trouble. Now the other thing, speaking of mana, you've got to look at your average mana cost in the whole deck as a whole once you've already picked out your colors, and then actually modify your, lands to match. I've had so many people where they're like, oh, I've never done a pre-release before, but my friend told me always put in X lands, like always put in 16, always put in 17, always put in 18. You have to tweak it by +1 or -1, and usually not really more than +2 or -2 off the baseline, based on your total, how do I say this? It's not just based on the highest, it's not based on the median, it's not based on the average, it's based on all of it. So the best way I can phrase this is, how bad would it be if you didn't get to 4 until like turn 10? Like, how much of your deck is above 4 and how important are those cards? And how many cards percentage-wise are below that? Like, could you survive if you didn't get to this high of mana at any given time? Or is your entire, 2 colors were eliminated for not having enough creatures, a third one was just too weak, and now your remaining 2 colors are just really overpriced. Like, there's a whole bunch of 3 and up and almost nothing at 1 or 2. I would run almost 50% lands at that point, just short of it. Like, if you don't get to 4 mana, you are doing nothing. And you're already doing nothing until turn 3 or 4 in that case. So you need to step on the gas and go. So if you were to start the game with 4 lands and 3 cards, that's fine. I mean, that's perfectly acceptable. I'd even start 6 and 1 because then there's not much left to draw in your deck. Although in that case, it's a little different because it's a 40 card deck. So definitely do not just pick a number for land and do it. Actually look at your spells. And then for color balance between the two, don't just say, okay, there's 65% black and 35% white, so that's what I'm doing. The more expensive a card is, the more likely you are to have fixed your mana base by then. So you look at the number of cards in each of your probably 2 colors that have double of their color. So it'll be like black generic for the cost. Okay, so you can't cast that with 1 black and 2 white. You can't do it. So you look at the amount of those in each color and double down if they're low cost. Because, if it's a 6 cost with double black, who cares? Like, probability wise, you're going to have 3 white and 3 black at that point. Who cares? Like, the 2 doesn't even matter at that point. But if you've got a 2 cost double black, okay, you're really going to need blackout. But then if that's the only one in the whole deck, I don't know if I would change my whole mana base by 1 just to do that. And it's not even by 1, it's -1 plains +1 swamp. So you're actually changing it by 2. That's why this is so important, because you do not want to get, stuck high and dry and you're holding a bunch of black cards with nothing but plains on the field. That would be really bad. Now, the other thing that people fail to consider is if you've got a ton of double colored cards, they're all really cheap, but they're all really powerful, because usually that indicates the card is powerful. It's kind of like legendary. They throw it on there if it's hyper powerful. Well, if they want to kind of color lock it and make it harder to come out on an early turn because the card is just obscenely powerful, they put a double color in the cost. So if you've got a ton of double colored, like we're talking a third of your deck is double colored on both sides, I would just up the land by 1 or 2. The reason for that is it ups the probability that you'll have just more land on average in your opening hand and in your first, 2 draws, we'll say. And more land means more likely to have fixed your land colors. So even if your whole deck is 3 cost on down, if a ton of them are double, which is very rare, I would up the land percentage just to make sure you can fix it and you can just hit the ground running. It is more than worth it to miss out on drawing 1 spell or creature to overdraw by 1 land. It's not that detrimental, especially late game. Now, the other tip that I always give everybody, this is the universal tip if you know nothing about pre-release, everybody will still tell you pre-sleeve your lands. I would pre-sleeve probably like 9 of every land, maybe 10. In Kaladesh or Aether Revolt, it was possible that you could go like mono-colored and then colorless artifacts or vehicles. It was doable. So then I would sleeve, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 of each land. So yeah, you got to buy a couple more sleeves, but it saves you just enough time. And your opponent shouldn't really care if you sit down and finish sleeving the rest of your deck when pairings have already gone up, but just be aware of that. It saves you a lot of time, especially if you're running like really hard to sleeve sleeves like Legion sleeves. They're a little bit sticky. I like them, but they're harder to get a card in and they're slower. You can't just slip them in real quick. The other quick tips: don't drop. That's one thing not to do. If you're losing, just reassess. Like you probably lost really quickly if it's a really bad deck. You're allowed to rebuild it completely between rounds and like keep it that way. So if cards aren't working or you made a mistake or something wasn't read the way you thought it was, just ditch it and rebuild your deck. You could knock out a whole color, redo your mana base and all that, and you probably got 30 minutes to do it. So I would just keep trying, and especially if your LGS does win a round, win a booster instead of overall stats, like, the top 12 get paid or whatever. Get paid prizes, I should say, not literally paid. That would be weird if they did that. Actually, some of them do in-store credit, and I do believe that's allowed, so who knows. So hopefully this guide helps you out a little bit. Like I said, if you want some more generic tips about, the exact process and more on what to do than what not to do, because chronologically you should learn what to do and then what to not do. I mean, if you just learn what not to do and then you have no idea what you're doing, you're not going to do very well. So check out the rest of the videos on my channel and check out some other guides made from some other people. But like I said, a lot of them are spreading drastic misinformation and overgeneralizations. They are logically and mathematically true. It's just in practice at an actual event, they don't work. So watch out for bad advice, and I'll see you guys next video.